Psych, bitch, you fucking thought. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back with the third voiceover video in a week. I am pumping and churning these videos out for you guys because you're just loving it. And you guys say my voice is nice and sultry and you love listening to it. Anyway, here we are. It is a Monday and we are squatting today. So on Mondays, I do not particularly feel the best, but given that I'm coming back to squatting, every day is feeling more natural to squat. So even on the days that I'm carrying some sort of residual fatigue, given that the baseline work capacity as well as my proficiency with the movement in the short term has not been there, things are starting to feel a lot better. And I'm carrying over some of those cues that you guys saw me and heard me talking about in the last video into today's session. And overall, as you guys will see, I'm not super happy with how my squats looked, but in the moment, I was very happy with how they felt. And things are just moving in the right direction. And that's really all that I can ask for right now. You guys will notice I'm wearing that sweet Gengar shirt, which for those of you who are Pokemon fans, Gengar is probably one of the coolest Pokemon in the world. I was very happy to find this shirt in a bag of clothes that I had from when I moved to DC that I honestly forgot I even owned. I've been used to just re-wearing the same clothes that I've had in my drawers and laundry, not realizing that I had this whole store of golden graphic tees because I just have an absurd collection and hoard my shirts. So I was happy to find this one in there. But anyway, back to the squatting. So on today's session, I had a top set of 4, I believe, and then we had back down 6s. And warming up, the weight started to feel more comfortable on my back, which is honestly one of the biggest obstacles for me on squat and has been an obstacle coming back. No matter how strong my legs have felt, especially during that period of time where I was able to just crush hack squatting, crush leg pressing, felt like I could really propel myself away from any weight. The weight on your back is obviously something that's not present during that hiatus from the competition lifts. So it's been taking a little bit of time to get used to it again, but starting to feel really good here. I have Xavier, the co-owner of the gym again, helping me line up my back, or the bar on my back, for my squats. Things are starting to look a lot more even. I'm honestly pleasantly surprised that this method works. So Steve, I know you're watching this video. Thank you so much for the very simple suggestion, because it has been working way better than me getting on the ground and doing all my hip shifting and pelvis adjustment, restorative movements, blah, blah, blah. Those are all good and well. Those kind of movements have been doing wonders for getting my adductor to feel better. But when it comes to this bar position thing, I mean, you guys can see it is even on my back. It's looking good. And that warm-up felt okay. I think that the biggest thing for me going forward now is just going to be getting comfortable, really sinking the squats. My adductor definitely is still bugging me. There's no question about that. It is improving, but I think that because of where it hurts in the bottom of the squat, which for those of you who are not really aware of the concept of like a propulsion arc, there's something called a propulsion arc where basically the mechanics at the pelvis are subject to the gait cycle, right? And obviously gait mechanics and squat mechanics are different in some ways, but we can characterize things pretty similarly. And to make things as simple as possible for those of you watching, basically your femur has to go through ER to IR to ER again through the course of a squat. And on the initial stage of the descent, your femurs have to externally rotate, but to get to the point of competition depth, your femurs have to internally rotate. And then when you get to the point of really like sitting on your ankles in a super deep squat, they have to externally rotate again. We never get to that point in powerlifting squatting. And because competition depth is really the mid-propulsive phase where internal rotation demands are high and the adductors are responsible for internally rotating the femurs, I do get discomfort in the bottom of the squat. And that's something that I'm just going to need to get graded exposure to. Coming back to squatting, I was a little nervous about the adductor, thinking it would get worse. But honestly, it's been feeling better every session. And I think that that is in great deal to the credit of Steve being very conservative and smart with how much volume we're adding back in the initial stages, given that this is an intro block working together. I think that we've been doing just the right amount, and it's been serving me very, very well. I'm already feeling my legs get underneath me again. And as you guys are seeing right now, we had a back down sets of 6 with 195 kilos, which felt, smooth. Obviously, this is not anywhere near heavyweight for me, but they felt smooth. I felt like I was in a good groove on this day, and that's really all I can ask for. 1, given that I'm coming back, and 2, given that Mondays just historically don't move particularly well. After squatting, as always, we move on to bench. However, benches were taken on Mondays. This is a busy day, so I figure I have my knee sleeves on. Let me get on the belt squat again. And honestly, guys, if you don't use a belt squat in your training, you could be missing out. I think that it's a very, very valuable tool. I don't want those of you who are built to squat to really overthink it. For those of you who have favorable leverages, think of your Connor Borkerts, your Russell Orhe types, just really short femurs, can squat with their ribs stacked over the pelvis really well. You types can probably accumulate a lot of your leg volume through squatting movements, even if the bar is on your back. But for me, I have found over the past couple years that I cannot tolerate the amount of squatting that would be necessary for adaptation in my legs because my back just gets beat up. So doing a belt squatting movement has been huge for me. And if you guys have access to a belt squat that has room to add bands to it, I would definitely recommend doing so. And here's the reason why. Now, the Rogue Rhino belt squat is probably my second favorite belt squat, only to the Pit Shark. It is a fantastic piece of equipment. However, the force curve is a little bit different from squatting. And when we're choosing accessory exercises, we obviously do want to get hypertrophy and potentially, limit the amount of central fatigue we accumulate or axial fatigue that we accumulate as a result of the movement. However, if we can make it more specific without changing that factor, then that's a win-win. And in the case of a belt squat, the difficulty really is in the bottom of the belt squat. If any of you guys have used a belt squat, it feels hardest coming out of the bottom. Whereas when you're barbell squatting, that is definitely not the case. Most people are missing a squat right at parallel or just above. Some of you have probably seen Ray Williams squat, and when he misses or gets stuck, it is very, very high. Now, obviously, that is a very uncommon case. He's certainly an outlier with how extremely high he misses, but most people are going to miss a squat above depth unless it's just absurdly, absurdly high. So adding the bands makes the force curve more realistic, and I think that that's what I've found to contribute in a great way to squat progress. So that was belt squatting. They felt a lot better than they have in recent weeks. The belt squatting, even though I was able to do it during my time away from squatting, definitely did bug my adductor a little bit. But I'm starting to feel like I can produce, as much power as I used to be able to prior to having my little hiccup. So those moved really well. And again, somebody was still using the bench and the platform for me to move on to competition bench. So we moved on to my RDLs here, and I moved a considerable amount more weight than last time. That was a weird way to say that. I moved considerably more weight than last session. Doing 170 today felt easier than 160 last session, which obviously is not super heavy for RDLs, but this is not my prioritized lift. And when I get better at RDLs, my deadlift follows with it. And that's just to give you guys an aside. If you can do any sort of hinging movements in your program, I definitely recommend incorporating them. I think that there are plenty of powerlifters out there who sadly don't really know how to hinge or can't even really define to hinge, and I think that's a problem. Now, when it comes to programming them, I'm not going to mindlessly just program them for anybody. For example, I have some sumo deadlifters who just will go on tears and just have really, really productive mesocycles where the deadlift is just taking off, and sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze trying to incorporate, a taxing movement like an RDL and potentially, stymieing that deadlift progress. And that's a note to all of you self-coaches out there, as well as those of you who are coaches who work with athletes. I think that just because things are valuable does not mean that they're valuable all the time. And I'm very much a proponent of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if things are going well, there's no need to disrupt that beautiful progress for the sake of trying something that might make things better, but might also make things worse. So moving on to bench press, one of the things that I want to talk about is capping percentages and capping weights for sessions that are not the prioritized sessions of the week, and the value of doing such. Now, I've always been a very strict RPE only person with my bench press because the stress of taking higher exertion sets is not the same for me as it would be for the squat or the deadlift. And just prescribing straight percentages does not really make sense when you can rep so close to your max. Like the RPE to percentage conversion, it just isn't the standard, and it's not as predictable as it would be for squat or deadlift. So I've always just worked with straight RPE. I've done some percentage back down stuff before, but Steve is both using strict percentages on some days and percentage drops on some days. But ultimately the point that I want to get to is that by really leaving more in the tank, and I've always been pretty conservative on the days that I don't prioritize, but really just getting quality work in and not even trying to push it on the non-prioritized days, even if you feel good, already seems to be yielding positive results. And I've seen positive results with this exact same mindset with my own clients, where if you really just focus on treating sessions like this Monday like a primer for Tuesday, as I've mentioned in the past, and just get the volume in without being attached to any sort of numbers, as the weeks progress, those sessions, leaving you fresher for your better days, will leave you fresher for your bad days. And then you're just able to compound more productive training sessions over time, and it just yields more progress that way, rather than running yourself into a wall on one of your secondary days where you might feel better than you anticipated, and then it bleeds over into your good day, and then you overreach, and then that just bleeds into the following week, and it ends up just being this game of catch up. So one of the things that I'm going to be very deliberate about this training block with Steve is adhering to those percentage drops exactly, like 100% not deviate from prescribed weight no matter what. And I think that this is something that a lot of people, especially those who train with exclusively RPE, do not appreciate or do not understand why it's so important for the long term. I think that in a situation like mine, where on the next set, you guys will see my percentage drop is to 137.5. Now, in many cases in the past, if I had prescribed myself that percentage drop, I probably would have said, let's go 140. It's pretty much the same as 137.5. It doesn't matter. And while in an isolated instance, something like that probably doesn't matter too much, I think that it's a dangerous game to play, because a lot of people just let these little acts of defiance that seem harmless on the surface snowball. And then you end up just getting to the point where you start to forgive taking singles that are an RPE or an RPE and a half higher than what is prescribed, or just having a day where you feel really, really good and just going all out. Right here, I actually misloaded the weight, which literally never happens. I don't ever make that mistake, but I forgot to put a collar on. I was probably just too busy talking at some point and got distracted. But I mean, right here, like, I have not worked below 140 on any competition or Larson bench pressing in years. But here I am hitting the 303 that was prescribed per the percentage drops, and I'm priding myself and committing to really sticking to this, and I think that it's going to yield more of those positive effects that I was alluding to before when talking about how really sticking to the plan on those secondary days, even if you feel really good, that is a definite way to yield long-term progress. So as you guys saw last week, I was supposed to be doing those 45-degree hypers and didn't have access. I stayed at the gym this day because one of my lifters was testing his maxes, so I did not want to go to my bodybuilding gym while he was lifting. I needed to prioritize that. So I came up with a good alternative, since the glute ham raise for 45-degree hypers is just not a good exercise. I was doing Zercher good mornings here, which, while they look kind of uncomfortable, they are actually great for mimicking something similar to the 45-degree hyper, because it just blasts your hamstring and glutes, but you really don't feel that stress on the back because of how close the bar is to your lower back. Today is a tempo bench day, and I'm wearing my off-white dunks. I know some of you sneakerheads out there will appreciate that, but I'm looking thick as fuck. Daniela loves when I wear these pants. Sorry, Daniela, I had to expose you there for a second, but I'm looking like, I don't even know. I'm just looking fucking beefy today. But the reason I'm wearing these dunks is they actually feel really good on the carpet. And I wore them to the gym. I didn't feel like changing out of them into my FEIYUEs, which, by the way, I do not have a discount code for them, but FEIYUEs or LUTAIs, they are martial arts shoes, are probably the best shoe to bench in. They are super cheap. They're like 25 bucks. I'm going to put a link in the description, but it's FEIYUE or LUTAI. They are both literally the same shoe, but one is the knockoff of the other. and it's literally the grippiest, it's the perfect bench shoe, honestly. For carpet, for horse stall mats, it's the best. So that is my bench shoe of choice. I know many people have asked me about that just because it's not really a shoe that a lot of people wear. It's actually funny how I found them. One of my best friends in high school was into powerlifting with a group of us, and he is Chinese and would go to Beijing pretty much every summer, and he would come back with pairs because he would get them there for like $4 US. And one day I tried them and I was like, these are the best shoes ever. I used to wear them when I pulled conventional way back in the day, and I switched back to them for bench press a couple of years ago after swapping out of heels, and I just haven't gone back. They're phenomenal. But today we were trying to look swaggy. That was cringe, but you're just trying to have a day. You know, you feeling yourself some days. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. Anyway, moving on. Tempo single, 451 pounds. This is 5 kilos up from the last Tuesday. And these are the kind of incremental jumps I plan on taking over the next couple weeks. Obviously, when the RPE creeps up, I'll probably take some 5 to 7 kilo jumps. But assuming as weeks progress and the RPE stays the same per the program, I'll probably just be sticking to 2.5 kilo jumps, or even utilize the chips if necessary, because United Barbell does have 1 kilo and 0.5 kilo plates, which is just, for those of you who are not necessarily the strongest, I think having fractional plates is actually a fantastic way to continue to drive progress, or not even necessarily drive progress, because I have talked about this backwards idea that people have, that you need to overload to make progress, rather than the truth, which is that progress is what allows you to overload. But anyway, that's an aside for a different video. For those of you who can't make the full jump up, 5 pounds, getting fractional plates is super useful. But anyway, we got Daquan giving me a lift off with some wonderful swamp ass here. Oh my goodness. Day, you might not want to be wearing gray sweats to the gym anymore. Plus, there's no girls here anyway, so no reason for that. But anyway, Daquan is giving me a lift off here for 2 count pause bench presses, really trying to keep me honest here. I felt a little bit sloppy on these pauses though, because I was just really jittery from caffeine, and it was just harder for me to hold them there. So I wasn't too happy with those, just because there was some wobbling at the chest, but it is what it is. Moving on, we did some landmine presses for that shoulder health and movement variability. I was able to go up 5 pounds today from last week. What am I doing with my left hand here? Like, that is the most like stiff, like weird looking position. It looks like my hand is just frozen. But moving on to the accessories, as I mentioned, was able to hit more on the landmines today. I felt like my pelvis positioning was better on this day. Felt like I was able to really reach through, and last week I was having some trouble with that. I don't really know why, but this day just felt a lot better. Obviously I didn't show from the side last time. I think I showed a back view. Almost just ate shit right there getting up. Obviously 35 pounds is too heavy for you, big boy. But that was the end of the landmines. We're moving on here to dumbbell pen lay rows. I wonder what the hell I was talking about there. I was probably talking shit with somebody. But dumbbell pen lay rows, we were able to do 5 pounds more than last week. And somebody commented on the last video, why don't you let the arms hang and get a stretch? And listen, buddy, whoever you are, I did exactly that today. And let me tell you, it felt phenomenal. And I don't know if you guys experience this, but sometimes I feel like when I row, I'm not getting that much range of motion. But then I watch the video back and my elbows are like past the plane of my body. And I don't know if that's just because I can retract really well and relatively it feels like not a lot to me, but it ends up absolutely being enough. I don't know if that's just a me problem. Shit, it might be. I was only able to, so sorry Steve if you're listening to this, I was only able to do 2 sets of these tempo lat pull downs because I actually started to feel some weird kind of nerve tingling in my left arm, kind of like ulnar nerve almost. Nothing painful and it's gone by this point, but I don't know if it's because the grip was wide and just how it orients my arm, having to take a supinated grip with such a wide grip. But these moved well, they felt good. The pump is sick, but yeah, I had to cut it short after this because my hand was starting to feel a little tingly. So we called it there, but that's okay. We got enough of a pump on this day. We were looking pretty mighty thick. And that is the end of Tuesday's video. Okay, spooky season moving on into Wednesday. You guys might be wondering what the hell is going on here? Why are you lifting with the lights off? Literally 5 minutes before I got to the gym on Wednesday, the power went out. And honestly, it was kind of cool. Like, United has been pretty low-key lately, and I was just waiting for some sort of stupid shit to happen because it's fucking entertaining. And Nick had a bunch of lights or little flashlight things that you could set up on the ground, and it honestly made it look like some sort of like weird cult stage thing, but it felt really, really cool and honestly helped me focus more having these 3 lights set up in front of me and not being able to see anything else in the gym. Like, Nick had a very limited number of lights to distribute across the gym, and it was me and one other lifter in there at the time, so we were just like, fuck this, we're gonna take all the lights from the other rooms in the gym and we're just gonna move them in front of our platforms because who the hell else needs them. So it was such a weird experience because the light was shining in your eyes so brightly, but then you just can't see anything past that. Like, you were just staring into a void. So did I hit depth here? Who knows? You guys will never know. You can't even see me. But overall, warm-ups on this day felt kind of fatigued, which I honestly expected given how much of a jump this Monday squat session was from last week. And I'm sure that just contributed to some sort of neuromuscular fatigue that bled into this high bar day. But I can't be too mad about it considering we were able to do more than last week. We were taking a 190 kilo single here, and here's Christian, who is the other person who was in the gym at this time. Christian and I have known each other since we were in high school, very early on in high school, and he was one of the first people that I actually got into lifting with. It wasn't really until I started training with Christian and a couple of the other kids that I mentioned, including the one who introduced me to the FEIYUEs, that I started to get serious about powerlifting. So it's interesting. You know, he still lives in Long Island and goes to school. But it's funny how, you know, for a while we obviously didn't train together, lived separate lives in different areas, and then things come full circle and we're back to training together. So that's always super fun. Love you, Christian. If you're watching this, you're the man. Thank you for being a source of motivation as well as a good training buddy all these years. So I thought today was going to be a top double, but the program actually called for 2 singles. So we went up to 210, which was the appropriate jump from last week's high bar double, but it ended up being 2 singles instead for today. And I decided to be the responsible adult that I am and said, you know what? We're just going to take 210 for the singles. We're not going to go up from there, even though I thought I was going to have to hit it for a double. That's fine. And honestly, I'm not too mad about it because this single that I take right here doesn't actually move that well. So one of the changes that we made coming into this session, we being me and Steve, is that since I am squatting in heels again, he does want me to do these high bar reps barefoot, but I am elevating my heel on a 2.5 kilo plate. And the reason for the barefoot is what I talked about last time, really getting good understanding and relationship with the floor through my feet and not just relying on the shoes, but doing so with an elevated heel since that's more specific to my actual squat, and then just carrying over those same feelings of management of center of mass as well as just not overly supinating and all that sort of good stuff, having an active arch in the foot, carrying all of that over into my heel session when I do my competition squats on Fridays. And I think I cleaned things up here, got a little bit more hyped, was playing some music, which obviously you guys can't hear. But this 210 single moved way better than the previous one, so I'm happy about that. If I threw on some heels, you know, started to treat it more like a competition squat set, I'm sure that I could bang out a ton of reps with this, especially since grinding on high bar is way easier than grinding with low bar, in my opinion. It just feels like your head is going to explode. But I left it there. And there was a part of me that really, really wanted to retake a single because that second one moved so much better, and the entire, I guess not the entire session, but for the period of time after that single, I was like, shit, I should really retake 210. That first one shouldn't even count because it sucked so much, but the thing about powerlifting, when you give yourselves these second chances like that, on meet day, you don't get those second chances, and I think it's important to just let things go and just move on to the next thing, perfect it in the future sessions. And in my case, I still had back downs to do, and I can focus on doing those things right on the back downs. Now, obviously it's a little dark for you guys to see here, but it actually, like I said, it really felt cool to lift with the power out. It was supposed to come back like 30 minutes prior to me hitting this set, but nobody ended up coming to fix it. So we were just squatting in the dark, and finding those 2.5 kilo plates was a challenge. And at one point I thought I was gonna potentially have an accident, but luckily nothing happened. And Christian was like, "You sure you want to keep doing this after I rack this?" And I'm like, "No, but it's the last set, so it doesn't matter." So we were done with squats there. We moved on to bench press. The lighting makes this American flag look beautiful. Look at that. Wow. And this is another day where it's usually doesn't feel good, but like what I was saying before, with capping those days that are the secondary or tertiary days, it really plays a role in just elevating the baseline level of performance across all days. And I know that I'm a proponent of, like, you know, taking advantage of when you feel good and adjusting when you feel bad, but I think that mindset has to be applied appropriately. And most of the time it doesn't make sense to get out of pocket and just do that every time you feel good, and especially doesn't make sense on the days that aren't the primary days to focus on. So this is my last warm-up here with 170 kilos, and it actually felt really fast. Like, I was like, wow, I feel almost as good as I do on my primary days. But this Wednesday session is a day that I take doubles and then back down doubles. And the way that Steve has the prescription written out is I take as many doubles at the top set prescribed weight until I feel like the RPE starts to degrade, and then I drop down to the back downs. Now, as you guys will see, this was like a 6 or like a 5, and I could have repeated this probably for all the sets. I think I had 5 sets of 3 on this day, but I decided to just go with 3. Last week was a pretty low energy day by the time that I got to bench press, and I only did 1 set at the top set and did the following 4 at the back down prescription. This session I did not want to push it and have to force myself to get hyped to maintain the RPE. So I just stuck with 3 sets, and then the following 2 were the back down, which this being 187.5 kilos, the back downs were 177.5 kilos, and everything moved really smoothly. And honestly, I enjoy this. Like, for those of you who bench press pretty frequently, it just feels like a chore, and not that I'm complaining. Like, I will gladly just eat the monotony and just shit that we have to do in powerlifting training. Anything to work toward that end goal. I don't care. But it is nice to have those days where you can just kind of shut your brain off and just go in and do what you need to do. And that's what I did here on bench press. Nothing exciting there. How does this look, guys? This looks fucking cool. I don't know about you guys, but this looks fucking sick. And I honestly wish that the power went out more often so I could lift like this. But we had deadlifts today. This was my last warm-up of 220 kilos. We had a top set of 4 at RPE 6, followed by those percentage back downs. And that's honestly what I love about Steve. You know, he does see the validity in high rep deadlifting, and he's made posts about it. We have personally spoken about it, and he knows my personal history and success with it, so he programs it. But I think it's amazing, and I think that it's a really admirable quality in a coach when, even if they don't do something most of the time with lifters, they still understand that there's a time and place for it with other lifters. So we do have a top set of 4, which is something that I wouldn't normally incorporate in my day-to-day training. If I were still programming for myself, I probably would just be doing a single and then my back down sets. But I think that the reason this is really valuable is that by doing a top set that isn't necessarily a single, that, you know, that absolute load is not something that you need to get crazy hyped up for. You're able to still get meaningful work in on that top end, but it doesn't fatigue you to the point where you can't do a reasonable percentage back down, right? When you take a super heavy single, even if the RPE is low, you do have to get your exertion and level of alertness pretty high to mentally prepare for it. Now you see me dancing to My Chemical Romance there. I was having a day. But you still have to get yourself pretty hyped up. And then by that point, even if the RPE ends up being 6 or 7, sometimes you have to drop to a much lower percentage than you anticipated for your back down reps. And I think it's not great to always just look forward to a single every week and then all that volume just kind of goes on the back burner. I think it's important to be enthusiastic about both. And I think that this is a good balance for this point in time, given how far I am from competition, to have a top set that does allow me to exert myself, that does expose me to the top end, but I can really come in with the same level of alertness that I would on the back downs, and then move on to the back downs and be able to replicate them without much intra-session fatigue. So the lights came back on, unfortunately. I wasn't too excited that the power came back on. I was kind of liking the way things were. But we had back down 7s at 220 kilos, and these flew. These felt fantastic, way better than 215 last week. And my hips, just like I mentioned last week, are opening up way better this week than they were last week, and the movement just feels a lot more fluid now. And that's kind of where I want to end today's little voiceover video. I think that I covered a lot of different little nuggets of knowledge. And if you guys want to leave in the comments which of the topics that I glazed over during this video are particularly valuable, I'll make sure that the next voiceover video, I dedicate a specific block of time during watching the training to discuss that topic. But I've enjoyed doing these voiceovers very much. I think that it's been good for me, honestly, to rationalize my training and introspect on it, because I'm very, very busy in my day-to-day and don't really ever have the time to sit down and think about, like, okay, how is my training going and how do I feel about things? It's usually just in the gym, I'm just super focused on my training, and then outside of the gym, I'm just thinking about the next session, but I don't necessarily reflect on things the way that I think I should, and this gives me the opportunity to do so. And then, of course, you guys love listening to this, and you guys get an insight as to why I'm doing things, how I'm feeling, and then just I give you guys some little tidbits and pieces of knowledge to enhance your training and coaching and programming experiences going forward. So that's it for the video, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Remember, there are no bad days, and I will see all of you in the next video. Take care. Also, remember, don't forget to buy shirts on Saturday, 10:31, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, teamnori.com. Buy shirts. Okay, bye.